Imagine creating a villain so despicable that even calling him human would be a compliment, only to wake up one day and discover you've become that villain. That's exactly what happened to Kim Woo-jin, a game developer whose fate took the most twisted turn imaginable. It's the middle of the night, and Woo-jin has finally fixed the bug that had been driving him crazy for weeks. The character giving him trouble, Dialin von Grahan-Yukla, an intermediate boss and named villain in his game. Just as he finishes, his ex-girlfriend walks in. She also happens to be the team leader of the development team. While Woo-jin was always a procrastinator, she was a workaholic. Their relationship had ended 6 months ago, and she'd already moved on. Looking over his shoulder at Dialin's character, she casually drops a bombshell. Dialin's entire design was based on Woo-jin himself. Even his traits and skills perfectly complemented Woo-jin's personality. She notices her new boyfriend waiting outside and leaves, completely unaware of how her words have affected him. It's almost 2 a.m. and Woo-jin can't stop testing Dialin's character. He doesn't like that this villain is supposed to resemble him. Dialin's storyline is tragic. A child once called a magical genius, whose arrogance and noble background shaped him into someone with the worst personality imaginable. Throughout the game, he gets stronger but is universally hated. Woo-jin decides to add something special, an attribute called comprehension. Not stopping there, he sneaks in a few more of his favorite attributes: wealth, Midas touch, sharp eyesight, and iron will.
Yeah, boy.
Realizing he might have gone overboard, Woo-jin prepares to revert Dialin back to his original design. But just as he's about to fix it, he receives a mysterious text message telling him to look outside. When he does, he sees a massive hole in the sky. The last thing he remembers is a lightning strike descending toward him before everything goes black. The next moment, Woo-jin wakes up, but not in his apartment. He's inside the very game world he created, possessing the body of Dialin, a character fated to die no matter what. Dialin's sister Yil barges in, berating him for slacking off instead of fulfilling his duties as a distinguished professor. She dumps a pile of documents on him before storming out, warning him not to shame their household's name. At first, Woo-jin thought this was just a twisted dream, but as days passed, the realistic sensation of life forced him to accept the harsh reality. He has literally become the villain of the game he once developed. The gravity of the situation weighs on him. Dialin is the middle boss in the game, and no matter which route players take, he is the root of all problems and the ultimate enemy of everyone. During development, they tested the game around 1,000 times, and this character barely survived once. Dialin was created solely to die. A system notification pops up, showing that his primary survival goal is to become necessary to the game. For his side quest, he's supposed to deliver a lecture at the university, which will grant him 0.5 store currency if completed. Woo-jin decides to fulfill this mission, knowing the store currency will be crucial for his survival. Besides, he has the comprehension skill he added before being transmigrated. This attribute helps him understand literally anything with just a little mana. As Woo-jin prepares for his lecture, he notices how different this world is from his old life, yet he moves through everything effortlessly. The formality that once felt rigid now feels natural. It's as if Dialin's body is allowing him to completely take over, complete with the attributes of intimidation, dignity, and aesthetic sense. The stark contrast is jarring. Kim Woo-jin was a nobody from South Korea with average looks, a lazy, pathetic guy who got dumped. But now, as Dialin, he finds himself embodying the role of nobility perfectly. As he enters his car, Woo-jin notices a young boy sitting in the adjacent seat. The boy frantically greets Professor Dialin and hands over some documents. Woo-jin realizes this must be his assistant, who has apparently been serving Dialin for 3 years. The documents aren't lecture materials but a script for him to read. Feeling grateful, Woo-jin thanks the boy, only to experience a physical recoil in Dialin's body. It seems this villain gets physically ill just from complimenting someone. They arrive at the Imperial University, a place bustling with life. Woo-jin heads to Rotio Hall, where students have already taken their seats, eagerly awaiting Professor Dialin's lecture. Rumor has it that Dialin is a master of spell interpretation, a talent that once earned him the title of child prodigy. The female students are absolutely smitten by how handsome and imposing Dialin is, all except one. This particular student sees Dialin as the enemy of her father, nothing more than trash in her eyes. 3 years ago, this student's father took his own life after someone stole his thesis on spell interpretation. That someone was Dialin, the so-called genius spell interpreter. After losing everything, including her family's house and territory, she vowed revenge. She fought her way into the Imperial University where Dialin teaches, determined to expose the fact that his spell interpretation skills are nothing but stolen work that rightfully belonged to her father. Dialin commands the room's attention, introducing himself as the head professor of the Magic Tower and a monarch mage who controls the elements. He explains the fundamentals of magic, its 3 major attributes and 9 types, including summoning, spirits, destruction, support, enchantment, manipulation, ductility, bewitchment, and harmony. Woo-jin is surprised at how easy teaching feels. Even though he's just reading from a script, he understands everything perfectly. Dialin's natural presence and grace make the his students hang on his every word. As the lecture concludes, Woojin hesitates to ask if anyone has questions. To his dismay, that same vengeful student stands up. She mentions a mysterious spell discovered in the dormitories, assumed to be the work of the devil, and asks for Delane's thoughts. Before answering, Delane calls her out for not introducing herself properly, partly because it's proper etiquette, but mostly because Woojin's comprehension skills have already drained much of his mana reserves, and he's not sure he can analyze a spell he's never seen before. Despite his reluctance, the student persists, casting the spell herself and requesting Delane's interpretation. With no choice, Woojin examines it, instantly losing 1,700 mana in the process. Without hesitation, he declares it's barrier magic, specifically a bewitchment-type barrier spell meant to trap everyone in the dormitory. His sudden, confident response catches the student off guard. Later, in the university cafeteria, we learn the student's name is Irene. She had only asked that question to expose Delane as a fraud, but instead, she became the laughingstock. She's convinced Delane was just making things up about the spell. But then, one of her friends rushes over with news. After collective research, they've confirmed that the magic circle is indeed a barrier spell, exactly as Professor Delane said. Rather than exposing him as a fraud, Irene has only enhanced his reputation. As Delane walks away from the classroom, his path is suddenly blocked by a woman in white knight armor with white hair and light-colored eyes. Woojin immediately recognizes her as Julie Von Dia Fren, his supposed fiancée and a named character who will eventually become the pinnacle of knighthood. Julie confronts him about breaking a promise they made a week ago. Woojin, having no idea what she's talking about, claims to have forgotten due to his recent fever. In a flashback, we learn that Julie had made Delane promise to be truthful about his pretenses and arrogance. Their engagement was arranged to unite two powerful noble bloodlines, despite there being no love between them. The families later discovered that Delane's talents as a mage never truly existed. He had lied to the world by calling himself a genius at analyzing spells. Julie had accepted a loveless marriage, but she couldn't stand the lies, which conflicted with her beliefs as a knight. The Imperial University is the best in the game, with its magic department comparable to a prestigious medical school. Woojin takes note of the campus's grandeur, a place he and his team spent many nights creating. His only regret is being trapped in the body of a villain. Suddenly, Woojin notices someone following him. As he turns around, he crashes into his assistant Alan, who was carrying important documents. The papers scatter all over the ground. Back in his office, Alan presents the documents he was rushing to deliver, a list of sponsorships for new mages this year. As Delane reviews the profiles, one particular name stands out, highlighted in gold. Thanks to his attributes wealthy magnate and sharp eyesight, Delane can identify promising candidates who will bring him fortune. But as he prepares to select this golden opportunity, there are a few promising candidates in these sponsorship documents. But one name stands out the most, Arian Luna, the very girl who is actively seeking his downfall. To think that Delane's abilities have led him to see her as the most potential candidate for prosperity, even though she's determined to destroy his career, Delane recognizes her as one of the main characters in the game. According to the developers, the only information he knows about her is that she lost her father due to Delane's actions. He notices that Irene seems to have no sponsors, which is unusual for someone of her talent. Why does she have no sponsors? Delane asks his assistant. Alan reveals the uncomfortable truth. Everyone is cautious when it comes to her. No one wants to anger you by sponsoring someone who might become your enemy. One thing is commendable about Irene, however. Despite not attending the academy and learning magic through self-study, her talent speaks volumes. The potential in her is limitless. Yet Erin Luna is his enemy, or rather, he is her enemy since he's responsible for her father's death. If things proceed as they did in the original game, Delane knows he might very well end up dead. After all, he is destined to die in the game. He also has the attribute Villain's Fate, which ensures that the entire world hates him and wants him dead. However, anything or anyone that fails to kill him ultimately makes him stronger. In the game, Delane dies in countless ways, by sword, by poison, by assassination. The method may change, but the outcome is always the same, death. The only way for him to survive is to make different choices that the original Delane would not have made. With that in mind, he ultimately decides to sponsor Irene. After signing the documents, he tells Alan to submit them. He also instructs him to borrow several books he'll need for his survival plan. As he sits alone, Delane reflects on how much money he requires to survive. From what he knows, many of the deaths awaiting him can be avoided with money alone. Investing in a promising mage is one way to acquire wealth, but that alone isn't enough. There are countless characters in this game world who resent him, and they will try to kill him whenever they get the chance. In order to survive, amassing wealth and power is the only way out. While Woojin desires to become stronger, he remembers that Delane's talents are average at best. If he doesn't find a way to improve, he's certain he won't survive the numerous threats closing in on him. Luckily, there is one thing in his favor, his attributes. attributes. Dylan can't control all 4 elements as he boasts, but he definitely has potential in manipulating earth and fire. Combining earth, fire, and metal results in the formation of Dylan's unique attribute, Midas Touch. This attribute consumes the user's mana to unlock the potential of a target. Dylan's talents in manipulating metal also allow him to wield chi-controlled levitating blades. While it sounds grandiose, these chi-controlled blades are essentially just telekinesis at its core. However, in this world, telekinesis is not widely known or understood. If Dylan learns basic manipulation magic, he can compensate for his lack of raw power by manipulating metal objects. To make this a reality, he needs to first learn the fundamentals of manipulation magic, so he decides to test his skills. As soon as he activates his comprehension skill, he begins absorbing all the concepts and spells related to basic telekinesis written in his book. Once he has absorbed the knowledge, he uses his newly acquired telekinesis powers on a pen, and just like that, the pen floats into the air. Thanks to his memorized attribute, Dylan can cast the telekinesis spell without needing any incantation. Although the current telekinesis spell he's learned only covers the basics, it's already quite powerful. He can't even begin to imagine the possibilities once he learns more advanced telekinesis. The next thing Dylan wants to figure out is what to do with a magic circle. He considers engraving it over his entire body. In this world, magic circles become stronger the larger they are, so he plans to understand his body first using his comprehend attribute. Not just his brain, but his heart and inner core as well. Then he will engrave magic circles all over his body to strengthen his telekinesis. Of course, there is a risk that his body might overload or suffer side effects, but this is where one of his attributes, Iron Man, comes in handy. This attribute grants Dylan innate physical abilities, and the potential of his body is of the highest caliber. He's confident that this attribute will allow him to withstand any side effects. As soon as he starts the process of engraving the magic circle onto his body, excruciating pain triggers throughout his body, a pain unlike anything he's ever felt. It feels as though every bone is breaking and every muscle is being torn apart. However, as grueling as this experience is, Dylan won't waver. Not a single groan escapes his lips. After all, this is the elegance required of a noble. Finally, the process comes to a halt. Sadly, after enduring all this, Dylan has failed due to an insufficient amount of mana, currently standing at just 1 point. But the effort isn't entirely in vain. He now has a magic circle etched onto his shoulder. At this rate, it will take about 2 weeks to cover his entire body with magic circles. A small step, but progress nonetheless. A month passes after Dylan's seminar, and it's finally the first day of lectures at the University Magic Tower. All the students gather in a remote area, awaiting their first lesson. A notice board nearby contains a message from the professor. The professor wishes to test everyone's abilities, so the students will have to prove themselves by performing on their own in a place already rich with elements. The students are astounded that their teacher just left them to study on their own. The one who is most annoyed by this is, of course, Irene. While she curses him under her breath, a girl walks past her and intentionally bumps into her. Naturally, Irene, already irritated, turns to confront the girl. But when she recognizes the person in front of her, her expression quickly contorts into shock. It's none other than Sylvia von Josephine Illid. The two girls lock eyes for a brief moment, but Sylvia just proceeds to walk away, ignoring Irene as though she doesn't even know her. Later, as Irene is focused on performing her task, her mind is still preoccupied with the encounter. She is certain the girl she encountered is from House Illid. About 10 years ago, the Illids, fearing Irene's potential, surrounded their manor with troops and threatened them. So it's beyond Irene's understanding that Sylvia doesn't recognize her. Suddenly, the structure she is creating with her magic starts to falter, and Irene feels a heavy pressure in the air. It's as if her mana is being sucked somewhere. When she looks in the direction of the disturbance, she spots Sylvia, who has just created an enormous structure, which is 1,000 times larger than the one Irene was making. Naturally, Irene is furious as the turbulence caused by Sylvia's magic has completely disrupted her work. But Sylvia pays no attention to the noise around her, continuing her task undisturbed. This only infuriates Irene further. The fact that Sylvia doesn't even acknowledge her existence is maddening. In an effort to get Sylvia's attention, Irene decides to provoke her. She begins throwing jabs at Sylvia, undermining her strength. After all, they were rivals, and Sylvia always used to threaten Irene and forced her to step away from magic, all to surpass her rival. But once again, Sylvia refuses to acknowledge Irene's presence. She claims she doesn't recognize Irene, but mentions having heard about the death of the impudent, negligent noble. Of course, Irene is enraged to hear this disrespectful trash talk about her father. Without a second thought, she leaps into the air, her magic activated around her balled-up fist. She's determined to make Sylvia regret what she just said. The enraged Irene lunges forth with a powerful strike, attempting to punish Sylvia for her disgusting words about her father. In response, the blonde conjures a protective barrier, her eyes flickering in doubt of her own ability. The collision results in an explosive boom, sending rumbles of winds across the bodies of the students, who groan before the impact. The aftermath of the explosion leads to the students checking on each other's health. When the dust settles, Irene is made visible, her left hand grabbing hold of Sylvia's head, roaring at the blonde for ever daring to insult her deceased father. As she continues to threaten Sylvia, Irene's eyes dart behind, realizing that some kind of mystical dark light has been created in the distance. The students panic and scream, while Irene questions if what she's seeing is a void. It's the same spot where both of their mana collided earlier, causing a rupture in space that is now engulfing everything around it. Realizing that the void is at risk of causing an explosion, the students panic even more and attempt to run away. Even Irene understands the risk of the situation at hand. The explosion could send metal fragments bursting everywhere like shrapnel, inevitably spelling everyone's doom. The space-devouring ball of black continues to eat away at its surroundings. Irene does her best to contain the magic with her might. All of a sudden, she no longer hears its sound or feels its weight, as if the void stopped on its own. When she opens her eyes, a towering man, clad in aesthetic noble attire, is standing before them. It's their professor, and he has just saved their lives. Delane's sudden appearance is shocking, but what's even more shocking is the fact that he stopped the fragments using ice magic in an instant. Following that, Delane left his students' mouths open as he displayed telekinesis magic to control the ice fragments. The sight itself left his students enraptured by the mesmerizing use of magic. Irene understands the use of enchantment magic in this case. However, even she could feel captivated by the beautiful display before her eyes. With the shards taken care of, the professor speaks. His words denote the end of the lecture, turning a strong glare to Sylvia and Irene. Delane tells everyone to leave aside from the troublemakers responsible for creating the situation. Right now, Irene's face tells you all you need to know. It's the definition of an "oh, I'm so screwed" moment. In the next scene, we jump all the way to the interrogation room. There, Dealen awaits the arrival of the other professors, namely Rin and Raylan, who are the professors of the Spirit Studies and Support Studies department. Welcoming them is a woman sitting next to Dealen, the chairwoman of the university, Adeline Seelan. With all the professors seated, they now turn to question the daring student who attempted to strike down a lady of the Iliad house. Turns out, Irene is classified as a nobody, to the point they discriminate against her worth based on her nameless background. Of course, the situation was prevented thanks to Delane's intervention, impressing all the other professors. Giving it some thought, Delane understands the outcome that will result from this disciplinary meeting. It's obvious that the daughter of one of the most influential families will be seen as the victim, while the fallen noble Irene, a mere commoner before the university's eyes, will be seen as the evil perpetrator. Hence, Delane feels the urge to involve himself and bring about a shift to that perspective. After all, ever since he set his eyes on Irene, he could sense doses of scarlet energy just leaking out of her body. It's as clear as day to a villain character like him, an attribute called the villain's fate. Basically, when the entire world wants you to die, there's trouble brewing. And if he can't influence the outcome soon, his inevitable death will creep closer and closer. The official meeting to conclude Irene and Sylvia's fate is sprung into action. Ran is the first one to roar at Irene for senselessly engaging in conflict and jeopardizing the safety of many students. It was only thanks to Delane's personal involvement that nothing grave happened. In response, dejected as she is, Irene states that she cannot mention her reason for the attack. This kind of avoidant response comes across as an offense to the teachers. But right now, all Irene can think about is concealing her intentions, so her target, the scumbag Professor Dealen, doesn't know that she's after him. Sylvia's provocative words race through her mind, but even if that is the truth, she can't risk saying anything in front of her one and only target. That is why Irene is willingly sitting through discomfort and pain for the sake of her long-term plan. Relen roars at the girl once more, questioning if she's got some sort of an inferiority complex. He drills it into her head, reminding her of their difference in status as a noble and a commoner. Next, Sylvia is told to speak. She also tries to conceal the matter and excuses that she was responsible for accidentally destroying Irene's work, which led to an argument. This puts her as an innocent person in front of the eyes of the disciplinary committee, making it even more irrational for Irene to have made her move. The professors continue to grill Irene, questioning if she's got anger management issues. Ran even goes as far as to recommend expelling the student entirely, refusing to slide this incident with just a warning. Right now, feeling alienated from the professors and isolated in the room full of professors, Irene's heart sinks. The disciplinary committee seems determined to crush her future. Even though she refuses to respond with impulse, she knows the rumors circulating only mention the truth, which is why Delane seems perfectly fine with them. Suddenly, Delane's attention is drawn away when he notices that his target, Ganesha, is no longer there. Poor guy wanted to achieve just one goal for the day, and it was ruined by this blabbering loudmouth who continues to yap endlessly.
You're a f***ing idiot.
Walking right past the loudmouth, Deolaine annoyingly swears at him, even calling him a piece of rotten cheese. The insult leaves the man bewildered as the chill professor refuses to say another word and quickly moves on to locate Ganesha, fearing she may leave before he can acquaint himself with her. His plan is in shambles. He really wanted to end the rotten cheese then and there, but was limited by the presence of others around them. To his shock, Ganesha calls his name. She's standing right next to him, curious if he came looking for her. It's true that Deolaine found her unexpectedly after escaping the clutches of the imbeciles at the gathering event. Still, her reaction makes him wonder if these two have previously met each other. The Scarlet Adventurer chuckles at his response when he confesses he merely got lost. Ganesha calls out his little lie and knows he was looking for her. She apologizes for messing up their earlier mission and requests letting the matter go. Now it's confirmed they had a previous relationship based on commissions. The adventurer apologizes once more for failing to recruit a talented child under his wing. It was because of her personal attachment that she ruined the mission, refusing to hand the child over to him. Our boy is curious about the context of this discussion, gaining an understanding of Deolaine's decisions. The original Deolaine was going to use a talented child to do research in his place and maintain his name. Curiously, Ganesha asks a sensitive question. How long is he going to keep up the facade and remain the way he is? Her careful choice of words puts him into contemplation. It's true that before possessing Deolaine's body, the original Deolaine maintained a violent character, gaining many enemies and losing trust with people in his life, even hurting others for personal fame. But now, the current Deolaine has come to a decision, confessing that he's going to live a different life. Intrigued, Ganesha is surprised. She was fully expecting him to lash out and attack her for that statement. Kim Woo-in, who is possessing Deolaine's body, is rather surprised that the original professor would go as far as to attempt attacking one of the strongest people around. It goes to show the villain's reckless demeanor. While he doesn't know much about the original Deolaine's past relationship with Ganesha, he knows for a fact that this woman could easily annihilate him with no effort at all. Two of her most prominent attributes are invincible body and master of martial arts. You can only expect her to go absolutely berserk with those stats. She's one of the few adventurers who has reached the height of her physical capabilities. If the original Deolaine had hired assassins to do the deed for him, Ganesha would have died already. While he's having this contemplation, Ganesha is wondering if this guy hit his head or ate something spoiled today. She can't place a finger on his strange behavior. Deolaine, having already achieved his goals for today, quickens to leave the discussion. Ganesha is rather surprised and wonders if it's really true that he won't be sending anyone after her. Turning to her one last time, the cool professor remarks that it would be beneath him. This girl is literally left too stunned to speak. Going back to the hall, Deolaine internalizes that he could easily utilize Yukin's power to pressurize the adventurer using the guild. However, doing so would only cause his death variables to increase. To his utmost horror, the system informs him that he just prevented a death variable. This means that Ganesha's conversation from earlier could have ended very differently. Even a simple social gathering event is waving death flags over his head. The scene switches to Julie, an adventurer who is relative to the talented knight. She sits in annoyance, clearly disoriented and in a bad mood. Julie realizes what must be causing her sour expression, so she boldly asks if Julie has made any progress with her fiancé as of late. Just hearing that, Julie's body fidgets. Julie clarifies that she means Professor Deolaine, as there were rumors spreading about them. Recalling his annoying response from their meeting, Julie doesn't hide her frustration, expressing that their relationship is in the gutter. Only this time, she confessed it out loud. In a surprising turn of events, the man of the hour comes around to leave. He spots her, but continues leaving. Despite being known for loving gathering events, he didn't even shoot a look towards his fiancée, causing people to wonder if he's got a sour relationship with Julie. This adds to the rumors about him. Deolaine's early leave from the gathering event raised a number of questions, all leading to one theory. They think it's because Julie and him had a fallout. A week has passed since he attended the social gathering event. This man has been putting in the work, looking at his muscles as he finesses that pull-up. Apart from his usual memorization and telekinetic training, he introduced working out to his routine to increase his stamina. It's mostly because he nearly died from experimenting with some crazy magic just a few days ago. This guy was on the floor coughing out blood. In his miserable condition, any normal mage would have died from what he did. The only reason he survived is thanks to his Iron Man attribute. In a quest to achieve greater strength after encountering Ganesha, he attempted to engrave fire control alongside his telekinetic powers. This would aid his metal manipulation overall. He wanted to upgrade his core magic for his telekinetic ability, cutting off the time needed to learn additional magic. However, this method was extremely reckless, even for him. It was only after experiencing the incredible strain on his body that he felt the need to dedicate some time to training. training. That's how he came to develop a workout routine. By the end of his routine, this guy is looking like a fitness model with his aesthetics. With his morning workout wrapped up, it's time to go to class. The scene jumps ahead to Professor Delane's office, where we see Alan delivering the professor a message from the magic tower. The sender is classified as someone from a high rank. Prying open the message, Delane learns that there's an audit hearing in 6 months regarding his research. They just want him to prepare some documents for the hearing by that time. Of course, this is troublesome because this means Delane's research is put under fire and under question for being delayed. The thing about Delane's role is that he's always been classified as the head professor in the eyes of the game. It's critical for him to maintain his title as a professor because the moment he loses it is also the moment his hopes of returning home will be dashed for good. Right now, he's going to scavenge and find anything worth his time from his laboratory. Delane enters the room, which is a complete and utter mess, as if there was an attack of some kind. The place has been uncared for, and if Delane frequented the laboratory often, there's no way he would have kept it in this horrendous state. Interestingly, one disgusting spot looks particularly out of place. It begs the question if he was trying to hide something there. There's no telling, but Delane thinks it's a good way to test the waters and see what's up. Thanks to his telekinetic magic, he didn't have to dirty his own hands. Plotting through the trash, from the remains he grabs a book and pries it open. It seems like Delane encrypted his life's work to ensure that it wouldn't get stolen. Be that as it may, our boy can easily use his comprehension skills to bypass this issue. It's thanks to that he's able to cast open a golden bright light, hinting at the significance of his incredible research. Thanks to his attributes, wealthy magnate and sharp eyesight, he can tell that this book is definitely valuable. Despite that, the research seems incomplete, with many pages ripped in between and left unfinished. But even after all its flaws, it shone brightly once again, hinting at the research's significance. Surprisingly, Delane spots a pendant with a picture of Erin Luna and her father. This helps him piece together their relationship. Turns out that her father was working under him as a researcher. That's why the Luna family despises Professor Delane, who tortured her father for his own fame. It's because of Delane that Arian has navigated a brutal life. But now, things will be different. He's made up his mind to complete the research with the help of his comprehension skill, and right after its completion, he's going to add her father's name as a contributor to the research as a co-author. The scene switches to one of the cafes of the university. Here, some of the commoners have decided to band up as their own group, sticking for each other in the time of need. If they don't, the nobles will pull the rug from under their feet. Asking for Erin's opinion, the girl puts her on the spot. Erin doesn't know how to feel about the situation. After all, she is a fallen noble herself. Still, she's fine with forgetting about her previous life, because right now, she doesn't even have a residence in her name. The orange-haired girl proudly accepts Erin as one of their own, the rest of them denoting her as the representative of the commoners. One of the girls, donning a shorter hairstyle, suggests they get permission from a professor to approve their club officially. At first, they bring up Professor Rellan, but knowing his attitude for always protecting nobles, he's out of the count. Then, there's Professor Carmel, who also shuns commoners. One of them adds that Professor Delane wouldn't be a good pick either. While this is happening, Erin is too busy salivating at the sight of a beautiful strawberry dessert. The orange-haired girl erupts in confidence, believing that they should definitely ask for Professor Delane's help. They're all hoping that Erin will be the one to make the request on their behalf, a role that she clearly didn't sign up for, as evident by her shocked expression. One guy agrees, believing that Delane is their best shot as he looks down on everyone, no matter the status. The fact that Erin escaped punishment thanks to him is enough to conclude that Delane favors her a bit, or at least that's what these guys think. The girl clarifies that there's nothing of the sort going on. She genuinely feels upset that the conversation has taken a shift like this. Erin wants nothing to do with Delane after all. Refusing the request, she bolts away, but the orange-haired girl chases after her anyway, hoping that she'll reconsider it once more. Erin clarifies that whatever they're thinking is not going to happen. Julia suddenly freezes at the sight of someone. Erin wonders what caused her to stagger like that. It's only when she turns to meet Delane's gaze that she realizes it's the devil himself. She certainly wasn't expecting to encounter him in the worst timing possible. Julia runs the heck away, leaving it all to rest on her shoulders. Erin is there, not knowing what to say, as the professor is already leaving. Hesitating, she makes her move, grabbing his attention. She requests the creation of a club that requires an approval from his end. In the end, this girl mustered up the will to ask him despite her embarrassment. She reasons that he usually doesn't approve requests from commoners, which is why she is also worried. Though Julia's approach was ridiculous, her suggestion was actually right. Erin believes they should just try their luck and see if it works. To her shock, Delane takes the letter and actually signs it, even requesting a note of details to be sent to his office. Erin is starstruck as she's handed the paper back, unable to believe that he actually approved the creation of the club. She just can't figure out his personality. Julia runs all all giddy, thankful that Erin successfully managed to get a signature. Meanwhile, the troubled girl wonders why he's doing all of this. He's being exclusively nice to her for no reason. Fast forwarding to the lecture, Dealain teaches the students about elements, which are supposed to be the building blocks of magic, and yet many mages are still unaware about the difference between categorical and pure elements. As he's giving his lecture, Erin's thoughts drift away elsewhere, not knowing if the professor's actions are rooted in guilt or even sympathy. This man, the one who drove her father to his grave, despite his nice gestures, all of it feels fake to her. She thinks that if he truly feels responsible, then he should drop the act and reveal the truth to the world. Seeing her visibly fidget in annoyance, Julia wonders if she's all right. This snaps the girl out of her contemplation. Julia thinks her friend is annoyed because of the students across the table. Erin is confused at first but quickly realizes that it's the nobles, along with Sylvia, who have a terrible impression of her. After all, her stunt from that day made her an enemy of every noble family. Erin tells Julia that it's all right. She just wants to focus on the lecture for now. Zooming in on Dealain's lecture, he explains the significance of magic circles. However, she knew that his lectures used to be different. Right now, Dealain is expertly explaining how each spell is affected by adding strokes to the magic circle. He furthers the main topic of learning for today, something he terms flowing fire. The thing is, Erin is right. Dealain's lectures initially used to be a showboat of his talents and authority as a professor, but the lectures conducted by Kim Woo-in right now were recreations of the beauty of magic, and they showcased a fundamental understanding. During a tense moment, Julie's subordinate Veron comments that her sword appears turbulent. As a member of the Order of Haydn and one of Julie's most loyal men, he understands her emotional state all too well. Julie quickly apologizes for showing such a disgraceful side of herself, but Veron reassures her. He believes it's unfair for the current head of the household to pressure her into marrying someone like Dealain. Julie warns him not to speak ill of Dealain, though she insists it doesn't matter to her. Seeing Veron fall silent, she turns away, ordering him to prepare as she gets ready to leave. Veron remains deep in thought, contemplating the path he has chosen. To prove his loyalty, he's determined to undertake a task that only he can accomplish, one he believes will bring Julie happiness. There's a darkness in his determination that suggests he might go to extreme lengths. Meanwhile, at the Burr Assembly of Elders, a conference is underway regarding the appearance of a demon in the Mountain of Darkness. The elders discuss the magecraft they've developed using mystic arts to combat demonic entities. Realizing it's time to take action, the conference leader orders his men to send letters to the 12 sorcerers, summoning them to Burr. With that command, the letters are dispatched across the land, setting major events in motion. Back with Dealain, he's finishing organizing the items he obtained from the auction. Following his careful plan, he prepares to equip Ruan's ring, which enhances mana recovery, and the ancient rune necklace designed for mana storage. Following Ganesha's advice to prevent theft, Dealain plans to secure the rest of his items in a vault. However, an issue arises. The Frost Flame Stone isn't responding as expected. While he knew it wouldn't be easy to use right away, he's surprised that his telekinesis has no effect on it. He suspects the stone's mana is actively resisting him, which is concerning considering how much he spent on it. Recalling his library research, he remembers reading about communion, a method used to tame legendary swords by establishing a connection with them. Wondering if this process involves forming an understanding of the item itself, Dealain decides to attempt it. He reaches out to the stone, and the moment he makes contact, a sudden surge of energy pulses through him. To his surprise, he successfully gains a 0.1% comprehension of the stone, increasing his mana by 300. However, at this pace, he estimates that fully mastering it would take at least a year, as it demands an immense amount of mana. Wondering if this slow progress is his only option, he sets the thought aside for now. Shifting his focus to upcoming plans, Dealain reviews his schedule and notes the dinner arranged by Zeit. However, upon noticing the date, he tenses. This event was scheduled before he possessed this body, and in just 3 days, a death anniversary looms. Both events weigh heavily on his mind. When Dealain arrives at the restaurant, Von Messel, Julie's subordinate Veron, is already there. Julie, who left earlier, should already be inside. Zeit greets her warmly, complimenting her appearance. Dealain, catching sight of Julie, is momentarily taken aback. She looks stunning, a stark contrast to her usual battle-ready attire. He acknowledges the effort she put into her appearance, feeling a sense of admiration. Another figure stands beside Julie, having helped her choose the dress. Dealain, focused entirely on Julie, hadn't even noticed him at first. Then an unexpected introduction takes place. He meets Josephine, Julie's sister. She isn't just any relative. She's a named character he must tread carefully around. Josephine is someone who would use any means necessary to get what she wants, months. In other words, a sociopath. She's the mastermind behind Shadow, an undercover intelligence network that operates behind the scenes, with strength comparable to that of Zeit. Her only real attachment is to Julie, and anyone who threatens her sister risks invoking her wrath. Dylan understands why Josephine hasn't acted against him yet, but the way she watches him makes it clear her hostility is just beneath the surface. As he steps into the room, Dylan immediately recognizes the situation as a critical and potentially deadly obstacle. To navigate it safely, he must prove his sincerity regarding Julie. Zeit wastes no time and directly asks Dylan when he plans to hold the engagement ceremony, reminding him that 3 years have already passed. Before Dylan can respond, Julie objects, but Zeit stops her, stating that the adults are talking. Dylan is about to reply, but hesitates, troubled by the immense aura emanating from Julie's sister. Looking at her, he declares that he is leaving the relationship entirely in Julie's hands, stating that if she doesn't want it, he will gladly accept her decision. Julie is visibly shaken by this statement. Zeit, concerned by how easily the engagement could be dismissed, voices his doubts, stating that the family heads won't approve of such a decision. Still trembling, Julie turns to the head of the family and requests a private discussion. Zeit thinks for a moment, then agrees, and he and Julie's sister leave together. Dylan watches them go, trying to decipher Zeit's true intentions. Meanwhile, Josephine, holding a glass of wine, also wants to know what they are planning. Dylan realizes that Josephine is using some kind of skill to listen in on the conversation behind the door. Given her earlier laughter, he suspects it was merely a distraction to conceal a listening device. However, he sees this as an opportunity. If he can convince Josephine that his love for Julie is genuine, he might be able to neutralize this dangerous situation. Looking directly at Julie, Dylan begins to speak. He declares that he has already spoken his truth, leaving her confused. He insists that the engagement isn't something he can simply undo at will. At this point, things have progressed beyond their control. Growing frustrated, Julie questions his reasoning. She reminds him that before their engagement, he used her influence to arrange it, even negotiating with his family's elders by offering compensation. Julie's anger flares as she raises her voice. She accuses him of pushing her away from dangerous battles, pressuring her to abandon her pursuit of the imperial order and instead take charge of the Order of Haddock, which operates under the Yukine family's watch. She also brings up the rumors he spread about her after she refused. Her fury is evident. She cannot believe he is still resorting to these tactics. Dylan acknowledges her words, admitting that he has knowingly manipulated her and forced her to stay, committing actions that cannot be justified. Julie, understanding Dylan's resentment more than anyone, refuses to be deceived. She declares that she won't fall for his schemes. Dylan concedes that he has held Julie back and admits the wrongfulness of his actions. She listens as he shifts his focus, pointing out that both her older sister and brother have overstepped their boundaries. If not for the weight of family reputation, they would have no reason to oppose breaking the engagement. As Josephine silently observes, Dylan pushes his argument further. He tells Julie that if she truly wants to pursue her dream of becoming a defender, she must leave her family behind. Dylan, with a disarming tone, admits that he lacks both honesty and loyalty, leaving Julie in shock. He confesses that he embodies the very opposite of the values she upholds, making him an unworthy match for her. However, instead of breaking off the engagement, he suggests they remain betrothed but never marry. This would free her from the web of complicated interests surrounding them. Though he wishes he could let her go completely, he offers his name as a shield until she is ready to pursue her dreams. He promises to wait, keeping the engagement intact. Julie, stunned by his sudden shift in attitude, demands to know the reason behind it. Dylan assures her that he expects nothing in return, only that she smiles for him once a month. He declares that this is all he desires. His words leave Julie flustered, and even Josephine is momentarily taken aback. Dylan knows that he only said what Josephine wanted to hear to avoid an unpredictable outcome, yet he acknowledges Julie's reaction, finding her embarrassment unexpectedly charming. Smirking, he concedes that she has managed to win him over. In that moment, Julie, furious, snaps that she won't fall for his tricks. She finds his words humiliating, but if he is truly being sincere, she wants to see more proof. Josephine, flustered, begins to wonder if Dylan's feelings are actually real. If that's the case, she decides to spy on them a bit longer. With that, Dylan successfully avoids a death variable and gains 2 store currency. 3 days pass quickly, and the anniversary of a significant death arrives. Dylan arrives at the cemetery in his car, making his way through with emotions stirring within him. The setting sun casts a golden glow over the overgrown grass and scattered tombstones. Though this place holds no personal significance for Dylan, it does for Kim Woojin, his earlier self. A flashback unfolds, revealing a conversation between Kim Woojin and his team leader, Inu. They discuss adding an Easter egg to Delane's background. Inu suggests expanding his story with the author's approval, but Kim dismisses the idea, arguing that it's unnecessary and would only add to their workload. However, Inu insists that it's worth it, emphasizing their commitment to the game. Kim eventually relents, though he questions its importance, especially since it has no direct connection to the main storyline. Inu, however, finds the idea meaningful and insists that they must put their hearts into the game. Kim once again denies it, finding it meaningless and pointing out that Inu didn't even ask for his opinion before deciding to include it. Still, she believes it's a good idea and won't be useless at all, as she claims that Delane has a bereaved fiancé in his past. Kim reflects on her past enthusiasm for creative additions, wondering what she found so intriguing about Delane's lost fiancé. He contemplates whether it was done for their team's sake or simply a way to care for those around her. Back in the present, Delane searches for any remnants of Kim Woo-jin's memories, hoping to grasp the full picture. He questions whether Inu's choices were acts of brilliance or cruelty. Eventually, he finds a tombstone engraved with the name Inu Aravon and wonders why her name ended up there. It is then revealed that Delane's character was modeled after Kim Woo-jin, and Inu had chosen to use her own name for Delane's deceased fiancé. Delane wonders if she ever thanked him for it. Kneeling before the gravestone, he reaches out to touch it, emotions overwhelming him as memories of Inu flood his mind. He recalls her sweet voice whispering to him, the day she praised his drawings, the way she gave him his coat, the way she loved him, and the 7 years they had spent together. As Delane recalls his memories of her, tears continue to fall from his eyes. However, someone else at the cemetery is furious upon finding him there. After a while, Delane walks out, realizing that he has stopped crying, something he attributes to his personality coming in handy. As he continues walking, he hears someone following him. Turning around, he sees Lockhart standing behind him, radiating killing intent. Lockhart is surprised that Delane already knows him. Lockhart, also known as the Wizard Killer, is a mini-boss villain designed to be a nightmare for mages. His ability, magic nullification, makes him a direct counter to magic users. There are no real limits to his power beyond physical contact, allowing him to render magic completely useless within his range. Lockhart arrogantly boasts about his immunity to magic while relentlessly attacking. As he closes in on Delane, our boy swiftly dodges his relentless barrage of strikes, moving with precision. Lockhart is shocked. Most mages would have trembled in fear before him, yet this guy is effortlessly avoiding all his blows. Annoyed, he unleashes a powerful strike at Delane, only to be counterpunched in the face. Walking up to Lockhart, Delane calmly states that fighting him is meaningless. Several days ago, Delane finally managed to acquire 10+1 in-store currency and purchased the mana improvement skill he had always wanted. This enhancement expanded his overall mana capacity. While testing it through repeated practice, he realized he would need to completely readjust, but he was thrilled to be able to unleash a greater amount of mana with the same effort. During his training, he discovered that the skill's effects extended over a larger range than expected. Then, as he grabbed his practice stick, he was shocked to see his hand sinking into it, making him realize that the skill had also increased his physical strength as a whole. After multiple attempts, Lockhart is finally defeated and lies on the ground in front of Delane, utterly beaten. Delane successfully overcomes the death variable, earning additional store currency. Reflecting on the fight, he acknowledges that while he initially believed his Iron Man attribute alone would be enough, the recent trade enhancements made the battle far easier than expected. Lockhart, stunned, refuses to accept defeat. Furious, he shouts trash talk at Delane, accusing him of being a traitor. Observing Lockhart's intense anger and unusual abilities, Delane quickly pieces together the truth. Lockhart is not an ordinary opponent. He belongs to the Red Film Race, a revelation that leaves Lockhart in shock. The Red Film Race, named for their distinct birth markings, are the descendants of demons scattered throughout the continent. They conceal their identities as they are natural enemies of mages, just as magecraft was originally developed to combat demons. The war between mages and the Red Film Race has persisted for generations. As Delane explains this history to the defeated Lockhart, the man's shock confirms Delane's deduction. Born with distinctive markings, the Red Film descendants have been forced to hide their identities while harboring hatred toward mages. Delane sighs, wishing for a peaceful resolution. If only things could be super chill and nothing happened, he muses. But as usual, nothing goes his way. Just then, a catastrophic explosion rips through the front of a train, flames erupting violently against the backdrop of snowy peaks. A few days earlier, before Delane's departure, we see Sylvia, referred to as Blondie, being asked by her father to put away her book. He initiates small talk, asking if she gets burdened with numerous assignments at the Magic Tower. She nods, confessing to occasionally missing classes. Despite her father's reassurance and praise of her work, Sylvia remains fixated on becoming an archmage. She scoffs at the thought, convinced there's no future in that path if she can't manage simple tasks. After their blunt conversation, she questions why they're traveling to Bray so early, with the assembly still days away. With a heavy sigh, her father reveals a shocking truth. The trip to Bray isn't just an assembly, but what many call the graveyard of mages. Every summoning claims the lives of several mages. 15 years ago, 11 never returned. He explains that being invited to Bray signifies their family's prestige, chosen among 20 families. Attendance is mandatory. Those who refuse face expulsion from the regime, quickly replaced by eager new families. The assembly, he reveals, is essentially a ruthless culling of sorcerers, with ambitious newcomers targeting established ones to carve their own path to power. This explains their early departure. His sources leaked intelligence about a shady group planning to ambush late departing trains. Taking Sylvia along, he wanted her to understand the world's cruelty with a clear mind. Out of 12 traditional families, he believes all sorcerers must face consequences for this treacherous system. Dying on the way to Bray, he concludes grimly, is essentially a magical natural death. Days later, Dealane and Alan sleep peacefully on their train when a sudden explosion jolts them awake. Alan panics as a blinding light floods their carriage, and to his shock, he realizes the train is floating in midair. The professor has used telekinesis to stabilize the derailed train and place it back on track, a skill he had wisely memorized before their departure. Meanwhile, on the train's roof, a group of thieves prepare for what they believe will be a lucrative heist, targeting a train filled with professors. Little do they realize they've chosen the wrong cart to mess with. With remarkable speed, Dealane pulls out shards of wood and steel, dispatching several thugs immediately. Alan watches in shock before Dealane knocks him unconscious, ordering Veron to evacuate Alan and the other passengers to safety. He tosses the remaining attackers from the train, confident that his Iron Man attribute gives him an advantage. Though the battle drains his mana reserves significantly, leaving him with just over 1,036 units, he succeeds in minimizing the explosion damage and returning the train to its tracks. With Veron reporting all passengers safely evacuated, Dealane begins to sense something unsettling about his guard's demeanor. Suddenly, Veron erupts with murderous intent, catching Dealane completely off guard. The guard, who just moments ago stood by his side, now reveals his true colors. With everyone else evacuated, Veron declares it's time for Dealane to die. The timing couldn't be worse. Dealane's mana is dangerously low, and he never imagined his own guard would turn against him. Curiosity overtakes him, and he asks if Veron is acting alone or if someone else orchestrated this betrayal. When he mentions Julia, Veron's fury explodes. "Don't speak my master's name with your filthy mouth," Veron snarls, his eyes blazing with hatred. He insists Julia would never stoop to such methods. She's an upstanding knight. This, he claims, is his personal mission, to kill Dealane for Julia's sake. Dealane struggles to comprehend how his most trusted frame guard could become such a dangerous rogue. With only 10 mana remaining, he wonders if he stands any chance against this powered-up opponent. Canceling his telekinesis on the train to conserve energy, he prepares for a desperate battle as the train careens off balance. Elsewhere in Bray, Sylvia's servant Sero knocks on her door, offering her the region's special snow cone. He mentions that all invitees have arrived except Professor Dealane and the Rewind family. When asked if she's waiting for someone important, Sylvia remains silent. Left alone, guilt washes over her as she recalls a recent memory, the day she visited her late mother's grave. While pouring her heart out about school troubles and her frustrating Professor Dealane, she heard a faint sound. Peering around the tombstones, she spotted Dealane himself, standing in noble posture before a grave. Sylvia was stunned to witness something completely unexpected, a tear sliding down Dealane's cheek. The sight of the icy, arrogant professor crying shattered her perception of him. In that moment, she saw not the high and mighty academic but a man who had lost someone precious. Remembering her father's warning about attacks on late-arriving trains, anxiety grips her. Dealane hasn't reached Bray yet. Inspired by his lecture notes, she decides to take action, using a magic stone to shape a magical bird named Swift that will serve as her eyes to locate him. Meanwhile, Dealane is barely hanging on with several broken bones. Though the train didn't crash completely, thanks to his Iron Man attribute, he needs time to recover. Hiding from Veron, he hopes to buy some time, but his bloodthirsty guard tracks him relentlessly. Dealane can't believe Veron survived his earlier attack. The man's protective chi is impressive. They engage in fierce combat, with Veron clearly having the upper hand. Even at full strength, defeating him would be challenging. With depleted mana and exhaustion weighing him down, the odds are stacked against Dealane. Yet Dealane refuses to surrender. The thought of his skill, Resolute, comes to mind, his ace in the hole. This ability unleashes a surge of mental power that lasts until a battle ends. Even if his resolve wavers, his body will remain standing, the magic continuing to work regardless. reflex. As Veron charges with his sword, Dealain knows one cut could be fatal. He wonders briefly if death here would simply return him to his office. Suddenly, blood splashes across the room as Swift, Sylvia's magical bird, arrives at the crash site. Veron, consumed by vengeful instincts, leaps to deliver a final blow. But something unexpected happens. The space around him wavers unnaturally, causing him to lose his footing. In that instant, Dealain seizes the opportunity, slicing through Veron's hand in a fountain of blood. With his last reserve of mana, Dealain launches a wood-steel weapon that knocks Veron to the edge of the train, where he clings to life by a dagger with his remaining hand. Standing over his defeated opponent, Dealain smirks victorious. Gasping for breath, Veron demands to know what trickery Dealain used to turn the tables, though even Dealain himself seems uncertain about the strange spatial distortion that saved him. Now, with the fight effectively over, Dealain seeks answers about Veron's motivations. Veron explains that Dealain has wronged Julia and committed unforgivable sins. When pressed about his relationship with Julia, Veron's mind drifts to a pivotal memory. As a scrappy youth, he had gotten into trouble with a noble's son and was being framed. Julia, finding his claim difficult to believe, took responsibility for him. On their way to report him to authorities, Julia admitted the Freya family was indeed notorious for their nasty behavior. Instead of turning him in, she offered to teach him self-control. That moment changed everything. Veron joined the Night Order under her guidance, though his abrasive personality kept others at a distance. Julia became his only connection, his respect for her evolving into deeper feelings. Yet he knew his emotions would only burden her, so he kept them buried. What he couldn't suppress was his conviction that Dealain would be Julia's downfall, that every disaster stems from Dealain's actions. Dealain, unfazed by the accusation, tells Veron he's wrong, that he will change the outcome of Julia's fate and ensure she doesn't walk a path of destruction. He swears never to harm her and offers Veron his hand. But Veron, eyes blazing with mana, refuses to alter his mission. With a heavy sigh, knowing Veron's death will haunt Julia forever, Dealain makes his choice. He kicks Veron off the train, sending him plummeting into the abyss below. As he falls through endless sky, Veron's tears flow freely, hoping only for his beloved Julia's happiness. Through Swift's eyes, Sylvia witnesses the entire confrontation. She realizes Dealain killed his own guard in self-defense after Veron attempted to murder him. As she processes this shocking information, Sirio calls her attention back to reality. The assembly is about to begin. Though she leaves to attend the meeting, her mind remains fixated on Dealain, hoping he'll arrive in time to avoid further trouble. At the crash site, Vice Chief Lilia Freeman of the Security Bureau arrives to investigate. Guards confirm 2 people are still missing, Knight Veron and Professor Dealin. She notices an unconscious child, and witnesses report being rescued by a knight before the train crashed off the cliff. Suddenly, a telepathic message reaches Lilia, claiming Veron is dead after failing to eliminate Dealain. Startled by this mysterious communication, she scans the crowd, but sees no one suspicious. Then, emerging from the crash site, a battered but composed Dealain approaches. Lost in thought, he hasn't noticed the crowd yet. He realizes that without the strange spatial distortion during his fight with Veron, he would have died. Another nameless casualty at the bottom of a forgotten cliff. The question of who or what saved him lingers in his mind. Lilia introduces herself and requests he complete an incident report. Ignoring her, Dealain asks only for the time, 3:30. With 6 hours until the assembly, he inquires about alternative routes to Bray. Before Lilia can question him further, Dealain vanishes with a speed spell,
I'm fast as boy.
surprising her that after everything he's endured, he still has enough mana for such advanced magic. Meanwhile, at 9:30, the Bray Assembly Hall is packed with attendees. Sylvia anxiously awaits Dealain's arrival as the formal proceedings begin. A monstrous surge of mana announces the presence of Decton, the legendary leader of Bray who had abandoned the outside world. Looking at him, Sylvia realizes the level she must reach to challenge for the Archmage title. The roll call commences. Gillan of the Illid family, Ethans of the Bran family, Baron of the Vaed, and Ielm of the Rewind. When Ukin of the Dealain family's name is called, silence fills the hall. The host announces that names will be called 3 times, and without response, the family faces elimination from the 12 sorcerers. Gossip erupts throughout the hall about the downfall of the Dealain family, which has been among the sorcerers for 200 years. Attendees laugh at the talentless current head's apparent failure to appear. As the host calls Dealain's name for the 3rd time and prepares to move on, the doors suddenly burst open with tremendous force, silencing the room. Standing there, bruised but unbowed, Ukin of the Dealain family announces his attendance, catching everyone completely off guard.